Welcome back, everybody. Hopefully you had some good conversations about your mission. And we wanted to have you work on those before you started building out your stakeholder map so that you really feel freshly connected to your why. That's going to be your North Star as you go through this election season. You're going to look at that and ask yourself, are your decisions that you're making serving that mission? And are the partnerships you build in service of that mission? Today, you'll see we're on that third part of our training. We're thinking about, once again, who we serve, who do we want to serve, and we're going to be generating that stakeholder map. And so now Jen is going to talk a bit about what exactly network maps are, and we're going to dig deeper into what we talked about last time about them.
Excellent. Great to be here with everyone. I have a nasty cold, so forgive me if I need to cough or mute for a moment. But yeah, we're going to talk about stakeholder or network mapping. They're often used interchangeably. They are the same essential concept, which is a way to quickly identify what you're seeking to connect with audiences about, who cares about or is affected by the topic that you're creating, and how you reach them. So you can use network maps in all kinds of ways. It's actually a really useful tool for this particular cohort that you're in, but also we encourage you to use it outside of your elections or political coverage as well. You can apply it to your brand of like, who is our brand trying to reach, like at a very, very high level. You can apply it to a beat or a desk. You can apply it to a story, to a special project, to an event, to a promotion. And all you need to make a network map or a stakeholder map is just a pen and paper, or you can use Post-its as well, or you can do something virtually like a Google Jamboard or Mural or some of these other tools. But they're going to look familiar. These are like these mind map situations. And with your why in mind, now that you're like reconnected to your mission, it's really time to think about who in your audience or community that you've chosen is a stakeholder in that mission that you have identified. So during the second half of today's session, you're going to look at a community of focus that you've chosen for this project and break it down even further into smaller groups of stakeholders. You will probably end up with some of the same groups that you clumped together before, but you're also going to get much more specific and go deeper. So on the right, you're going to see an example here. This is a newsroom I worked with a couple of years ago, Energia Online. They were in Argentina, or are in Argentina, and they cover the transition to clean energy. And thinking about the coverage overall for the news outlet, the founder of the news outlet was thinking about who are people who are affected by this and who am I trying to serve as well. And what he did is he created all these sticky notes and clumped the ones closest to the brand as the key people that he's trying to reach and serve. And then the further away from the center are the people that are still affected and impacted and who his coverage is for, but they aren't as important as the people that he's trying to reach internally, like closer to the brand. And a stakeholder is someone with some skin in the game, someone for whom the stakes of what happens on any particular topic are high. So it's for whom this coverage is important and relevant. And it's a way to quickly visualize those stakeholders. So what you can do is you can put your topic of choice in the center and then think about who's most affected by the topics that you're writing about, who's doing related work on an issue. There might be some great folks that you end up partnering with, collaborating to put on an event or to co-report or to distribute whatever coverage you put out. Who's an influencer or power broker? That might be someone that you cover or someone that helps to get your coverage out there as well. And then this is one that is really rich to tap. Who may not be directly affected, but is still impacted in some way. This kind of group usually comes to mind after you've gotten through all the obvious people or groups that come to mind immediately. Start to think about secondary effects. Well, if these people are affected, who's in these people's world and how might they be affected as well? So that's where you can really start to expand your map and come up with story ideas and people that you're trying to serve that wouldn't have been obvious before. And then really looking for gaps. Have you really thought about everyone in your community? Have you thought about a number of dimensions, whether it's age or income or race or gender or any sort of thing, English, language, etc. So this is another kind of like we did last time. You're going to be as generative as possible, really thinking about as many different folks as you can. And then later you can start to organize things. So I'll show you an example of a map that looks more organized. Oh, sorry. Here, first, I'm going to share with you one quick example of like if you put vaccine access, let's say that's the topic you're talking about in the middle. This is just an example of different people that are really going to be key to the story or getting it out or coverage about them, etc. So you're seeing people without IDs, vaccine hesitant, elderly people, etc. So this is lots of different ways to define for whom is vaccine access a very big deal, and the stakes are high for them. So what you can do after you kind of start to flesh out all the different ideas is you can start to organize them and see patterns. So this is an example from, oh yes, Laura asked a question, if the slides are available between trainings. They certainly are, so you'll get those slides. This example that you're seeing here is from WBEZ. They actually focused their elections coverage on the people most impacted by COVID in Chicago, because the people most impacted by COVID were also people for whom the stakes of the elections were very, very high. And so after they did an initial 3 or 4, kind of like brain dumps of like, okay, who are the people that we could be serving? They ended up finding some categories for it. So one are people who are impacted health-wise, and others are people who are impacted economically. Now, of course, some of these people are in the same category or they cross over, but that was a way for them to start organizing their thinking about where their focus is going to be, because they can't reach everybody, and they didn't want to try and reach everybody. They wanted to impact and support the people who would have the most at stake if things didn't go well. So thinking about this for your election, this could be a second or third draft of your impact map or your network and stakeholder map. Once you've had a chance to really flesh it out, you might find a couple different ways you want to organize it. That can be really your North Star as you think about coverage and who's getting what, and have we created something that's useful for this group, or how are we distributing our content to this group in particular. So I think, let's see, is that it, Chelsea? And then anything more on stakeholder mapping on the slides here? Oh yeah, so I'm gonna throw it back to Chelsea for the next steps and take some tea.
Yeah, yes, please do. Thank you, Jen. So I'm just here to bring it all back home and say why we're really encouraging you to do these network maps. We've learned in the past several years doing this work that these ways of visualizing the unseen infrastructure or organization that makes up every interconnected group of people or stakeholders is just so useful in helping you get ready to go out and listen and go out and find the people that are that you're hoping to reach. And when you actually start putting your work in front of them and serving the information needs of these groups. So we map it out because the groups that make up that infrastructure are the groups that you're going to want to consider both listening to and approaching as potential partners. And we think of these network maps sometimes as our highway network, and the interest groups or ways that folks organize themselves are those on-ramps into the community or audience that you're hoping to connect with. So like I said, not just looking at who you want to listen to, but who you want to involve in the work that you're doing. We are a little bit ahead of time on our schedule today. Do we want to just go ahead and take our 5-minute break now, and then we'll jump into, great, okay. So we're gonna go ahead and give you a break now. We're gonna take that for 5 minutes, and we'll see you back here at 5 or 6 minutes after our
Hello, hello.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back from hopefully an incredibly refreshing 5-minute break. We're gonna get back into it now, and go from break to break out. So just a quick note on time boxing before we jump into these breakout rooms. You guys might feel like we're never giving you quite enough time on these brainstorming style exercises. We're asking you to think really big about a lot of things. We call it time boxing, and there's a lot of reasons for it, but it kind of comes from this idea of Parkinson's law that work expands to fill the time given. And we on the American Amplified team like to time box ourselves and you all, because it puts boundaries on the amount of time that you're going to spend doing a task and forces you to stay focused and be decisive. No analysis paralysis, paradox of choice. And it also can be really interesting and reveal some underlying biases that appear when you have to think quickly, and you can come back and address those later. So that's why sometimes it feels like we're moving super fast. It's on purpose. So now we're going to actually dig in for you to do your network map. I'm going to demonstrate again like last time using Mural. And if you're in person and you're using your Post-it notes, that's great. Just remember, or to let you know, I guess you wouldn't remember this, I haven't told you yet, you're going to need to reference these network maps for session 5. So make sure you have a way to document this, or a place you're building it in a place that you can keep it, or that you can move it to another place. You're going to need to look back at these. These are not a one and done thing. So watch me first on Mural, and then we're going to open up breakout rooms for you to join after this. So here is our beautiful Mural. All right, quick Mural tip. Whenever you open it, it's going to show you the last thing that you were looking at. So the last place that you were on your own Mural. If you haven't opened this since last time, you'll see the last thing. You'll be on the other part of the page. So just a reminder that the map is down here, and you can click and navigate to different parts of the board. And we're going to be working way over here in this far right little square. If you zoom out, you'll see it's the session 3 network mapping part 2. Right at the top there. And yours isn't going to look quite like this. It's going to be less filled out, hopefully. We filled one out as an example, and we're going to run through this now. So hopefully everybody has been able to navigate to that. And if you have questions about navigating your Mural, if that's what you're working in, throw those in the chat, and any of us on the American Amplified team can help you out. And we'll also be able to pop into your breakout rooms later. But Ampville is our hypothetical semi-rural suburb that we have decided to focus on for the America Amplified team, just for the sake of this example. And Ampville, in our little semi-rural suburb, we decided that we wanted to focus it there because it had lower voter turnout, and it's part of our coverage area where we haven't spent much time in the past, but it's a county seat. There's actually kind of a lot of power and influence that happens there. So we're excited to be turning our attention to the information needs of the folks in Ampville. So the way that you're going to do ours is you're going to put the community of focus in the middle, as large as Ampville, and then around it, you want to put 4 to 5 Post-its representing these different areas. So you have your organizations, which is one that everyone should put on there, businesses, nonprofits, or other groups that have a stake in addressing information needs. You have people, another one that everybody should put on their network map. These are people who hold power or influence in the community or audience that you've chosen and have a stake in addressing their information needs. Places are geographic or physical places where these stakeholders are, where they might gather. Another one that you should all put on there. last one that everyone's going to put on is media. These are other outlets that reach this community or audience and serve their information needs. And then this other one might be relevant. There might be another type of category that you want to have on there that's relevant to you. So there might be events. So this one might say instead of other, you might change it to events. Or it might be virtual spaces. So ours is actually kind of events over here. And that's what we changed our other to. So you might end up with just 4. You might not have events or others that you want to put on there. You might end up with 5. So you might end up with 6 if you did events and virtual spaces. Off of your categories, you're going to start brainstorming, kind of like word association. And it's going to just start branching out like a tree. And then you're going to catalyze more ideas as you add them onto your map. So I'm going to just have you guys, we're going to fill this out a little bit more together. So in this hypothetical semi-rural county seat town of Ampville, let's think of some like places that might exist in such a place as Ampville. You can throw them in the chat or just like pop off mute and say something that comes to mind, and just to demonstrate, give you a gist of how this works. So what's an idea? Let's see, we got a VFW. Nice one. That spark any ideas for other folks? We got maybe a Shriners that makes me think of, oops. And so you can connect these arrows sometimes. Didn't want to connect nicely. We're gonna go Shriners. Oh, VFW is a veterans group, if I remember.
Of foreign wars.
Veterans of Thank you. Libraries, yes. We'll throw like county library. So if you click same object, it'll do the same thing. County library. And then some places have both a county library and a city library. So we'll throw that city library on there because we're going to say that Ampville is one of those. That made me think of that. Any other auto parts store? Oh yeah, AutoZone sometimes is a place to be. All right, and so then you would be like, I'm feeling stuck on places. I'm gonna think about some people. And we would throw some people out there, and you can just move around your board, move around your space. If you're both working on it at the same time, you could either work in the same spot, or you could work in different spots and then switch. There's really no wrong way to like bring this all together. Hey, welcome back, team. All right, it looks like folks have all rejoined us back in the main room. Welcome, welcome. So thanks for being thoughtful for those last 20 minutes. And now we're going to have a quick debrief with you all. And we're just going to let questions or your thoughts pop up. You can raise your hand or you can just come off mute and share. But answering this question on the screen, how was the stakeholder mapping exercise helpful to you? How are you thinking that you might use it to identify potential partners in your engagement efforts?
It was super helpful for me because unlike the sticky notes thing we did live last time, we sort of narrowed down to be narrower is easier, and to have the diagram that makes you be as specific as possible about people and places and big groups and then subgroups of that group. It's just very helpful in terms of a roadmap because
So
go ahead.
that's great to hear, Laura. I'd love to know what your community is, what you're thinking of focusing on.
Well, one of the things that we want to do is we've had a really hard time engaging our non-public media audience in election work that we've done. Surprise, surprise. And we've done everything from partner with League of Women Voters to groups in different communities, NAACP and different Latino organizations to try and get the word out to communities that we're going to be at a certain place to either share information or distribute assets. In 2020, it was all about the changes in the laws because of COVID. And we canvassed neighborhoods and we did flyers, and of course we put stuff on our air, which is useless, but tried to partner with Spanish language media, and we got like 2 people. I mean, people just did not come. And so this is a perennial problem. And I don't think we're alone probably in this in terms of engaging our new audiences and to try and get them to come to listening sessions or to help us know what to cover, what they need us to cover, that kind of thing. I mean, it's a lot to ask. It's kind of arrogant. I've just come to the conclusion that it's really arrogant, and so we're trying to figure out better ways to do it. So we're going to do a comparison of two precincts adjacent to each other that are very low or very low voter turnout, and do a ton of engagement in one and no engagement in the other, and see if it makes a difference.
Interesting. A/B testing. Oh, that sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Joe, what station are you at? What's your community? And then want to answer your question.
Oh, it's me, right?
Yes, it's you, Joe Burns.
Joe Burns. I'm with WMFE, and Brendan Byrne and I are taking part in separate locations. The thing that really struck me, so Brendan and I were working on it, and it just struck me that this would basically explode with usefulness and sources and connections if we were to get the whole newsroom involved in it. We can see so much as we try to answer these questions in regards to people or places or organizations. But I think if we were to really get the whole newsroom involved, just so many more opportunities and options would open up.
Awesome. Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, I'll piggyback on what Joe was saying. We're with IdeaStream Public Media in Northeast Ohio, and my colleague Stephanie and I were, we know that we have a lot of folks on our team who know the county that we're wanting to focus on quite well, but we're not those people necessarily. So, like, we had a lot of ideas, but I think you know, we'll be able to get more specifics once we can tap into like the knowledge of our colleagues. And I will say, like, we were very focused on a certain population, but we found that in order to make the exercise work and not be too broad, we had to sort of pick a place too. So for us, it ended up being both. And then that helped to narrow down and make it feel more doable.
Nice. Yeah, narrow. It's got to get narrow. Megan, and then we'll jump into our next part.
I don't know if ours is narrow enough, but it's first time voters of color under the age of 30. We had originally said Latinx voters, but I really feel like we have one of the larger per capita populations of Native Americans here, and I just don't think we can not include that. But it's helpful to start thinking about what we don't know. I was asking Mia, like, where do young people go? She said, I'm not a normal 20-year-old, but thinking more about how can we, and I'm sure putting this out to my whole newsroom will help, but definitely thinking of possible partners are folks we've already kind of worked with or touched base with over the years, or at least I have. But it would be great to brainstorm some more. So I'm excited about that.
I
Great.
think there's a number of stations that are interested in reaching Native American audiences too. So that's something that we can definitely be talking about over the course of the year.
Yeah, now that y'all have chosen
Reddit, yeah. I know at least one of my folks has used Reddit. I do not that I'm opposed to it, but yes, that's a good one to add. Thank you. I definitely know TikTok. Mia and I were part of a statewide news summit here, and I sat at a table with very young people. Most of them are journalism students, and they all get their news on TikTok. So
There you go.
There it is. Now that y'all have chosen your communities of focus, we're going to be thinking of your potential cohorts too. So we'll be asking you who those are soon. But the next step that we're going to talk about now that you've mapped your network and everything is empathy and deep listening. Now that you have done all this work, I do hear you talking about your partners, and you probably want to jump out and start that outreach, start making content. But we are not there yet. If you remember the design thinking process that we introduced last time, we are designing a project and we've only just started to figure out who it's for. So just a reminder that we're still in that empathize stage of design thinking. This is when we are talking about different kinds of empathy and what deep listening really is. And I know that some of the stuff that I'm about to get into might seem far afield from the day-to-day routines of your newsroom workflows. But it is this strategic type of thinking that gets us to where we're hoping to be. And I think that you'll really see how it all comes together. And there is a reason that empathize is the first step of this process. We first need to involve and connect with the community that we're trying to reach and serve, and explore how our project idea connects with their wants and needs. I think that the Interaction Design Foundation puts it really well. They say that empathy is simply crucial to the human-centered design process, as it helps you set aside your own assumptions about the world and gain insight into your users or your audience or your community of focus and their needs instead. The empathize stage of the design thinking process is a time for you to collect as many experiences, insights, and observations as possible so that you can build a solid foundation for the rest of your design project. So what that means is we go out and we spend a bunch of time listening to our community before we start to make anything. So, but I have so many ideas, Kelsey. Can't I start generating content for this community now? I think that as we do this work, we really see two problems that come up time and time again when we just start making something right away. In theory, first one is that and through your working with a community or audience that you haven't been able to serve in the past, you haven't been able to meet their information needs yet, or you haven't quite done that as well as you hoped to. You're going to have to do something differently than you've done in the past in order to deliver on your promise or to meet your mission. And you probably don't know exactly what that is yet. You learn that by listening to that community. And then I also want you to challenge yourself when you use the word for. We do provide a public service, but if you haven't listened to what your community or audience needs or how they need it, is it really for them? Have you ever gotten a gift from somebody that seems like it was for someone else entirely, or that it was like more for the gift giver than it was for you? Stepping out and building empathy and practicing all this deep listening is how you avoid being the selfish gift giver or the totally absent-minded gift giver. So Jen is going to pop back in and talk to us about how how we flip the traditional story cycle script to make our work resonate, and make sure that our work resonates with the audience and community that we're hoping to work on.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chelsea. So on that note of gift giving, if you want to go to the next slide, this is traditionally how newsrooms operate. I know some of you have seen this graphic before. It's the newsroom saying, here's what we think you need to know. It's saying, we know what to gift you, what information it is that is going to be most helpful to you. And, as Chelsea mentioned, when you get gifts that aren't consulted with you first, or someone doesn't know you well, you're going to miss the mark. And so this approach really kind of positions the newsroom as a parent, saying like, we know what's best for you. And that's just an impossible position for a newsroom to be in. There's no way, no matter how smart, how diverse, how in the know you are, that you'll be able to get it right all the time by assuming. And so you'll get it less wrong. It's not that you'll, get 100% an A+, but you'll get it way less wrong if you consult people first, and you'll make your coverage way more helpful to people. So how this looks when we get to like the big design decisions that need to happen within the course of a story is this is how the traditional model typically looks, where when you think about the major decisions made through any reporting, there's a pitch process where ideas are generated. There's the assigning where you whittle them down, the reporting, publishing or broadcasting, and then potentially some sort of feedback. Usually newsrooms in that parent kind of top-down role don't allow any involvement from the public in the big moments of decision making. So, you're making these decisions totally in the dark from what the public wants to know. And you're putting all your money and resources into something before you know if it's actually useful. So what I found as a reporter was that whenever I published or broadcasted a story, I had no time to sit around and be like, what did people think? What's the feedback? What can I learn? I was running on to my next assignment. So this kind of approach is a recipe for becoming more distant from your audience and not co-evolving with them, and eventually not meeting their needs. And when that happens, of course, people don't stay with you. They don't stay members. They don't go to you for things when they feel like you're not relevant to them anymore. So in the next slide, this is going to be fun and awkward, but I'm going to quote myself from a piece I wrote about design thinking in journalism. But really what this means is that there's limited effectiveness. It means newsrooms are creating stories that they think are going to serve their audience, but you're not going to know that you're right until it's too late and you've already made that investment. So essentially it means a lot of time and money sunk into stories that don't necessarily resonate with, help, or serve people. And of course, nobody wants to go to work every day being like, creating things that don't resonate, don't help, or don't serve people. That's not why you got into journalism. You got into journalism for the incredible paychecks. No, sorry, that's a bad joke. I'm sick and my brain's not working. You got into journalism for the mission to help people because of like this idea of agape and philia, of like love and really respect for your fellow man, fellow person that you want to support with the work that you're doing. So if we go to the next slide, this is a different way of doing journalism that actually integrates the public into your decision-making process and allows that listening part, that empathy part of the design thinking to be threaded throughout the cycle of making a story. So you can allow the public to say, ask questions, what do you want to know about the election, or what questions do you have for candidates, etc. You can also allow them to vote on each other's ideas. Now, this would be curated from all the things that come in. So you're not ever allowing people to vote on something that you object to or don't have the resources to cover. And then my favorite part as a reporter was actually working with the people whose questions we were answering to shape the story and be an ear to be like, is this what you were looking for? Does this make sense? What's confusing? It's getting great user input before you finish the thing, which makes that story all the more useful to everybody. And then you can keep that cycle going afterwards as well, getting people to ask more questions, allowing people in, again, to co-evolve and to stay in lockstep with the people that you're trying to serve, especially if they're people that you haven't historically well served before or who don't even know who you are. You really want to make a good impression, and you really want to make sure you meet their needs. And the only way you know is by asking them. It's like really that simple at the end of the day. But what's not simple is that our newsrooms are like geared, and our operating systems are to do the opposite of this. So that's where this cohort and this learning really comes in, is to help you start to nudge your newsroom toward this more participatory, collaborative process. All right. And this is an old stat, but a goodie. And we have more stats that are like this, but this one was so clear, I thought we'll just keep this oldie. But at WBEZ, I started a series called Curious City a long, long time ago. And what we found is that just 2% of the stories posted on the website were from this series that was public powered, that had people involved at every step of the way. But they accounted for 41% of the top 50 stories posted on the site that year. We see that over and over again with our partners, that for any series or work or projects or individual stories they're doing that start with what the public wants to know and includes them, they outperform other stories many, many times over. So that's just another piece of encouragement, when it becomes hard to start to change the operating system and, swim upstream. It's that these are actually going to perform better, and they're going to be a more service to people. So hopefully that's one more arrow in your quiver toward making that change. All right, I think back to you, Chelsea, for the next parts of it. Oop, and you're muted.
Yep. Yeah, thanks. It is so important to be able to point to it resonating with the people that you're working with as a case for continuing to do this work, because it is a shift in how we do what we do. And it takes, it's challenging. So what about deep listening and empathy in the story cycle process? That we're in the empathize stage of our design informed process. And though, what deep listening is. And so before we get into talking about deep listening and empathy and how it's done, I just want you to think about a time that you really felt listened to. What did it feel like? What did that person do with their body or their face? What did they say? What was the environment like where you felt listened to? And what happened after that let you know that you were listened to? You can just throw some features of what being listened to feels like in the chat, or you can shout them out, but we're going to get a little squishy here. What does it feel like to you when you're listened to? So Diane says they have their focus. People physically lean in, or they do so by asking more questions in the moment. You feel valued or seen, your ideas matter, nodding, leading in, putting their phone away, big one. You feel respected. Eye contact. Yeah. People are feeling like people aren't waiting for you to be done so that they can talk. Huge. Yes. Just listen. Echoed. Yeah. they ask questions that show interest in what they're talking about, that afterwards, that thank you for sharing, or thank you for trusting me with that. So yes, it feels like excitement. Yes, I love that. That connection. It's kind of like gives you that like roller coaster feeling sometimes when you're like resonating with somebody. Relief, willing to open up more and trust someone. So feeling like I'm receiving someone's attention, not giving them what they need. Beautiful. So you all know what it's like to be deeply listened to. It's a practice, it's intuitive. That's the feeling that you want to generate when you're meeting folks in your community of focus and are learning from them about what they need. So you know what it feels like in you to do it. You know what it's like to listen. That's what you're generating. That's how deeply you're meant to be listening when you do this work and you get to know your community of focus. And what that helps us build is this idea of cognitive empathy. There are kind of two different types of empathy that we talk about, both cognitive and emotional. Emotional is that one that reflects our biases, distorts our moral judgments in the same way that prejudice does. But cognitive empathy is a necessary tool for anyone who wishes to be a good person and is morally neutral, Paul Bloom writes. It's possible to understand why a person might have taken an action or entertained a belief without justifying or excusing it. And that's what cognitive empathy is about. It's about understanding, not justifying. That's what we're listening for. That's what we're building as we get to know these communities. And that empathy is going to help drive your work and help you reach that mission. So deep listening in our context, it really means that you're going to be open to a lot of complexity and explore boundaries that go past your present understanding of something or someone. And it might get quite uncomfortable because you're choosing to challenge everything that you think you know about this community. You have to go in and be vulnerable and humble. And it means you're constantly asking why. You're thinking about the context, the environment, the history, so many different factors that would lead a person into a particular experience that they're sharing with you, or the way they think about and interpret that experience. So, isn't that just reporting, Elisa?
Yeah. Yeah, isn't this just report? Isn't this what we do normally? Yes, it is on a certain level, but I'm old enough to kind of have the experience of going into many a reporting situation where I knew what I was looking for in terms of a soundbite. I knew what I was looking for in terms of a source, where I already knew what the story was going to be. So I'm an example of what not to do. And what we're trying to move beyond. So deep listening, this kind of listening is often best done without a pen and paper in hand, without a notebook, without a tape recorder, without a video camera, where you really are doing that kind of deep listening. And, you know, I'm sure that many of you have been in some of these sessions over the last 3 or 4 years, ways to overcome polarization, ways to talk to people who have different political views than you. This is a practice that will get you to the point where you can really begin to talk to and listen to people who have different political views than you are, which is going to be critically important in the next few years. So as you approach the community that you've chosen to engage with in this project, really do some deep listening as the first part of this whole thing, developing empathy, and use that empathy to build a project that accommodates and meets the wants and needs of the community that you're working with. We are going to be breaking you all up into cohorts. You're going to be in a cohort of maybe 10 or more stations working with one of the America Amplified trainers. And we haven't yet really determined exactly how we're going to break you up. It may be that You will be divided into cohorts depending on the community you want to reach. It may be depending upon the size of your station and your experience with engagement. But that's all going to happen over the next 6 weeks or so as we learn about the communities and as we move into the whole January and the Hark and Embed project. But we've done this in the past, and it's been a very valuable way of carrying this whole thing forward because we learn from each other. It's a peer learning experience, right? So we're wrapping up now. We're moving on towards your homework. We want you to continue to think about who it is you need to listen to. Hang on to that network map that you created and keep adding to it. Bring it back to your newsroom as a whole and have them brainstorm and post-it note it. With the feedback you had on your mission statement, finalize it and share it with your America Amplified trainer in your next meeting. That's what we've got. Back to you, Chelsea.
Thanks. So yeah, in those cohorts, we're gonna dig even deeper into these ideas of deep listening and empathy. But for now, we are actually at our halfway point, as I mentioned earlier, of the training. And so we're gonna use this last bit of time for a reflection. Looking at the last three, or sorry, we're going to use the I like, I wish, I wonder model. What do you like in a training, and what do you wish happened in training like this one? And what are you still wondering about this training? There's going to be a Google Doc dropped into the chat in a moment, and you're going to go in there. You'll see a bunch of different lines that you can just start typing in where somebody else isn't typing. It's anonymous. Just fill out these 3 prompts. You're gonna have a few minutes to do it, and then we're gonna come back and we'd love for you to share back with us if you're comfy doing so, because it's really both for you and for us to make sure that this is still, we need to listen. Feedback is a gift, right? Anybody want to share their like, wish, wonder? We would love to hear from you. Or also, if you have questions, we're happy to answer them now. Maybe we can answer your I wonder.
And I know we told you it was anonymous, so obviously if you step forward, you're losing all anonymity. If that's a problem.
Which is, yeah. Go ahead. I think I talked over somebody, but if somebody wanted to chime in, go ahead.
I wonder if there are playbooks on report backs after events. So someone mentioned I'm gonna get their word wrong. But it felt exploitative or something like that.
Attractive.
Yeah. And Jen's word for this being an asshole. One of the main things to prevent that is to have a report back to the people you talk to about like, well, this is what we heard from you and this is what we're doing, and pretty quickly have product return. I'm wondering if there's like a guide on hyper specific strategies for stuff like that we can share.
That's a really interesting question. I can think of snippets from a couple of different guides. And so one thing maybe our team can do is put that in as a request and cull some things together, or maybe to share that back out with people, because there are definitely examples and ideas out there.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think that's a really good idea. And I think that you all should know that if there's parts of this process that you want more clarity on, that you want some background research on, just let us know, and we can, number one, organize a training around this, or for sure share resources about this, because we have a massive library of resources.
Yeah. Could whoever just asked that question drop your name in the
That's
chat?
Jordan
Okay,
Wilkie,
thank you.
North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah, and to Jen's point, which I think is really powerful about Curious City, and it goes with the research that just came out of University of Texas Austin studying community engagement, whether or not it supports revenue. And their study says it did, but devils in the details. And companies like Blue Lena, which provides a tech stack to help people engage their audiences, come up with regular information about this, where you can ask people and engage people all you want, but unless you like very quickly return to them with some sort of follow-up, you're gonna lose them.
Mhm.
And so like, yeah, I just think something really specific about a playbook about when you listen to people and what the next steps are very practically would be super helpful.
I love that idea.
I'm actually excited to write that one.
Yeah, JMR.
I think I recall from doing this last year, Elisa, the Harkin folks would feed us like, hey, we got this question. And we would discuss like, we were going to answer this way if it was kind of, because it's only about, how do you vote? And I would say, yeah, that looks good. But sometimes we do a story and then, sometimes we got the email directly, or so I would say, you asked this question, here's the story we did, or I would send it back to Harkin. I can't quite remember, but there was that in terms of a one-on-one thing, as people fed us questions.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. It's obviously sharing the story that you got when you were talking to people, when you were listening, but it's also, you could go back to a community group, play the story, and then get feedback. There's a host of ways of doing it, obviously.
Yeah, and we also need to think about whether the delivery method or the medium that we answered or addressed the information need in was the right one. Did it, is that how they consume their media? Is that how they learn? And if we're giving them the right thing, but in the wrong package, then it's not gonna be effective as well. So we need to look for that in the process.
Anybody else want to share your wonder, your wishes? There's some great stuff in there. We'd love to hear more.
I'm hoping I can get buy-in. Me and Mia doing this, because honestly, I asked my staff and they're like, are you asking us to do more work? We don't have time to do this. I mean, to do the training stuff. I'm like, fine, I'll let you know when we're done. But I feel a weight to like explain some of the things you're explaining. Like, this is why, I mean, I think that generally they will be on board, but because we've had a little bit of experience with it.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for being so open with us and open to these different exercises and ways of thinking about doing news. And thank you once again for giving us a big chunk of your day. We really appreciate you coming here and trusting us and are looking forward to the next sessions. We will see you all soon.